Welcome to the January 23rd, 2013 meeting of the Los Gatos Planning Commission. I would ask Mr. Polson to do the roll call.
Commissioner Sayoc.
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell. Here. Commissioner Talasfor.
Here.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
Here.
Commissioner Birch.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith.
Here.
Chair Erickson.
Here. And would you please stand and join Commissioner Sayoc, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A couple of bits of information for the public before we proceed. Essential to the Planning Commission discharging its responsibilities on behalf of the Town Council and the citizens is that the Planning Commission materially needs to have and encourage and have substantial input from the public. That's both a cornerstone of democracy and of strong town government. So we invite the public and provide two general opportunities for the public to have input during the course of a Planning Commission meeting. The first is when we do what we call written communication, verbal communication, which allows the member of the public to speak on any topic that they would like that's not on the agenda. Also, in the course of public hearings, we invite the public to join in those public hearings when they're invited to. If you want to participate in either case, we would ask that you fill out one of these buff cards and present it to the recording secretary so that we can call on you in the appropriate moment. If you have a challenging name that you think would be challenging for me to pronounce correctly, if you want to give me a phonetic spelling of it in parentheses afterwards, I'd appreciate that so that I can have a better chance at getting it correct. We have minutes from the January 9th meeting of the Planning Commission. Are there corrections, additions, changes to the minutes? If not, the chair would entertain a motion for approval. Commissioner O'Donnell moves.
I'll second.
Commissioner Smith seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Passes unanimously. We have one desk item that's a rather lengthy desk item, so I would suggest we take about 5 minutes or so to give members of the commission a chance to read it, since it's a rather lengthy desk item. Everyone okay? All right. So we have one requested continuance, item number 1, on our agenda. Does the staff have anything to add for the commission at this time?
Nothing to add, just that the applicant was preparing some graphics and exhibits and wasn't able to get those done in time for the meeting, and that was the reason for the requested continuance.
Thank you. We don't have any cards for anyone from the public who would like to speak to us on the consideration of the continuance, so I assume there's no one here that would want to speak to us about the continuance. So then I would open it to the commission. Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'll move to continue item 1, which is application S-12-073, 15310 Centella Court, Lot 12, to a date certain, and that date being the February 13th Planning Commission meeting.
Commissioner Talsfor.
And I'll second that. I appreciate the fact that they will have a more complete packet to submit to the commission when they come back. Thank you.
Motion by Commissioner Bourgeois, second by Commissioner Talsfor. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. I believe the only subcommittee report we have tonight is from the Historic Preservation Committee, which met this afternoon. And elected as the chair for the year Kathy Janoff, and postponed the election of the vice chair until all members of the Historic Preservation Committee would be at the next meeting in February. Also provided some feedback to some potential applicants on the demolishing and rebuilding of a house on Loma Alta Avenue, and probably most interest to the commission. The Historic Preservation Committee has identified some work items that they would like to work on over the course of this next year with the staff, potential work items with the staff. One is demolition worksheet, so something that would be given to applicants who would be considering proposing to demolish a particular structure, so that would provide better guidance to them and frame the process a bit for them. So it's something that's been in draft form. Second, work on a draft policy for alternative building materials. So what would be acceptable alternative building materials to substitute for original building materials in historic homes, and then better guidelines about the demolition of historic structures. So there's questions which arise from time to time about whether negligence, whether you let something deteriorate enough and then it becomes, by neglect, becomes then subject for demolition. So we'll provide some clearer guidelines about how one would balance those kinds of things. There was also a bit of a discussion. Ms. Avila is going to take up with Ms. Bailey and Mr. Capurso about whether there needs to be some potential revisions to the residential guidelines that provides greater clarity with respect to some issues that have been identified over time with both in historic districts and when they're historic homes. So they've kind of set an agenda in addition to in addition to applications that would come forward for the year. Anyway, so we're part of that. I don't think there have been any other meetings of any other of the committees since our last meeting, I think. We now would invite any member of the public, we don't have any cards, who would like to speak to us on any topic that's not on the agenda tonight. So no one wants to talk about the prospects of the 49ers in the Super Bowl or anything else that's not on the agenda tonight? Okay. If not, we will move forward with item number 2 on our agenda, which is architectural site application S-12-039, which is for a proposed residence on Union Avenue. Do we have any additional comments from the staff?
Staff did want to comment on the proposed 6-foot masonry wall on the front property line. It is proposed 11 feet back from face of curb rather than 15 as dictated by code. And generally speaking, staff didn't have a concern about continuing that building line, lining it up with the Leawood Court wall. However, when the wall is within 10 feet of the driveway, it would need to be lowered so we do not have a line of sight issue. In addition, the gate in its proposed location is not workable. It would need to be at least 20 feet back, and the problem with pushing it back on the site is then it would conflict with the backup area for the garage. So staff's look at this, it appears that the gate would not be approvable in the present location. There have been a number of comments from neighbors, which a couple of letters are attached to the report, and another one is attached to the desk item. And generally, neighbors have expressed concern about the wall, about drainage on the site and in the vicinity, the size of the home and neighborhood compatibility. And there are some specific changes that were requested by one of the adjacent neighbors that were all outlined in the desk item. The condition relative to all the code requirements for walls, fences, hedges was noted in the conclusion of the staff report as number 23. It's actually number 24. So if the commission is inclined to approve the wall or some variation of front wall, that is the particular condition that would need to be modified to number 24. I also do have engineering staff. If you have any technical questions on drainage, I would like to refer those to engineering. And otherwise, I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Albler. Are there questions for the staff at this point in time? Commissioner Sayoc.
I do have one question with regard to the desk item that's come to us on Exhibit 12. One of the issues was reestablished condition 13 of M0813, Biological Resources Mitigation Measure. Because I don't have it in front of me, which condition was that?
That is a condition requiring if a tree is removed during the nesting season or the bat breeding season, then surveys are supposed to be done by a qualified biologist looking for nests and or bat roosts. And so there is one tree proposed to be removed with this application. It's the elm. And so if that elm is removed during this breeding season, which is January through August, then those surveys would need to be taken care of before we issue the tree removal permit.
Other questions for the staff at this time? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I have two questions. First, was it a condition of the original approvals that Lot 1 be a one-story?
It was not a condition.
It was not a condition?
The applicant did indicate that they intended to do a one-story home several times during the process.
But it was not a condition?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. And secondly, in the staff report on page 5, the neighborhood compatibility table, I mean, I know in the residential design guidelines, we have a very specific definition of what the immediate neighborhood is. 2 houses on either side, the mirror 5 across the street. And so I was just curious as to why so many from Panorama and Cambrian were included in this table, and we only have one other home on Union Avenue, the one immediately adjacent to it. So I was confused that seemed counter to the way we traditionally look at the immediate neighborhood. So I'm sure there's a rationale behind it, so I just wanted to give you the chance.
This was a table that we originally used when we looked at the property as a whole, and so we did take into account homes down Panorama, as well as the ones on Leawood, and then one on Union. So I didn't modify the table greatly, and I perhaps should have. The Cambrian View lot as well abuts the property on the rear. So the original property went from the end of Panorama all the way forward to Union, and the 2 lots in the back that have already been constructed on are those 2 Panorama Way lots. So you're correct. Those Panorama Way lots aren't necessarily relevant to this application. They're just additional information.
Thank you.
Other questions for the staff at this time? If not, we'll open up the public portion of the public hearing and call on the applicant, Mr. Jeans.
Oh, 3 minutes. Is it 3 or 5?
Should be 5.
Thank you. Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to talk a lot about the house because there hasn't been a lot of concern about the house. In fact, most people have said, great, you are doing a one-story, even though you don't have to. If issues are brought up about it, I'll address them in rebuttal. I will talk a little bit about the wall. The Leawood Court wall is here. It's 11 feet back from the curb. We're proposing to continue it and all the way through. I did provide an item about the wall, which hopefully you have had an opportunity to look at. We are removing the request for the gate, so let's take the gate off the table at this stage. It appears that staff is radically opposed to it, so we'll take that off. So we would like to have the wall at 11 feet. I did, for the sake of other people, I did provide a series of photographs which show the street. This is Thomas Drive. That's all at 11 feet. Then Ann Way, that's at 11 feet. Then there are the 4 homes that have not had street improvements in front. And then there's the lot here, and then the wall on Panorama. All of those are at 11 feet. So I think it's very consistent to stay at 11 feet. The actual code says, blah, 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 no owner occupant on a corner or corner lot or premises in the town shall erect or maintain any fence, hedge, wall higher than 3 feet in a traffic view area. We'll talk about what a traffic view area is, unless a permit is secured from the town engineer. So we're asking you, as the body who can deal with the traffic engineer, to allow that at an 11-foot setback. And it appears that the town staff is saying that they would consider going along with that. These are traffic view areas. The top one is a corner line of sight. They don't like people blocking the view coming out of an intersection. There's another line of sight that says within 200 feet of an intersection in both directions, they would prefer everything that is higher than 3 feet to be 15 feet back. My issue is, if this is already substantially higher, then that is doing all the blocking of any view, and if we are forced to put it 4 feet back, it seems rather silly. So I think continuing at, for the project site at 11 feet is very appropriate. It would appear that staff concurs with that, but there may be other people who talk to this item on the agenda. I'll talk a little bit about drainage, just so you know what's going on. At the moment, all the water on Union and all the water here goes across the site, slopes across here, and ends up on these properties, Stephanie Linett's and Tom Mangano's. It's improved a little bit along here, but at the moment, this is very bad. As soon as this curb, gutter, and sidewalk is put in, a drainage grate goes here. So all of this water is trapped, and the water will not go across. Additionally, all the water on this site will be trapped into these 2 catch basins here, and will go underground to Union. That line is in, but none of this has been implemented. So they're getting very bad water running off. Additionally, there is a swale along here. There is a sump pump at this end. So instead of water going from here into Panorama, it goes into a sump, pump back here, and goes to Union. So we've addressed a lot of drainage along this property line to mitigate and improve the drainage for the neighbors. And I just want you to be aware of that. So when drainage concerns are brought up, it's only partially implemented, and the big portion, most of the water, is going to be taken away by the implementation of this project. So those are the two issues that I wanted to deal with at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans. Are there questions for the applicant from the commission at this time? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans. I would like for you to address a little bit about the architecture, just because I do think it's a lovely building, but you have a very challenging site. How do you define the neighborhood here? So I'm struggling with neighborhood compatibility. You're at the end or beginning of a very busy street, and you've got two very different product types on either side of you. So maybe if you could talk me through how you think this design integrates into the neighborhood on both sides.
I would say that it is designed as a transition between the 4 older homes, which will eventually be remodeled or replaced, and the houses to the right, which were built as a PD, and are substantially higher, taller, on higher ground. The town consulting architect, if you read the Cannon report, I think really liked the way that we had enabled that transition to take place. We do have a tower element in the building, but if you look, it's way over on the right-hand side so that it doesn't impact anyone here where more of the concern was, and it helps as a bridge between the much taller buildings here, which are taller in actual height and also set at a 6-foot higher elevation. So if you look at the smaller house to a stepped element here, to a tower, to the houses up on the hill, I think it works very well, and the town architect concurred. We like the idea of using a Spanish mission design. It is a California architecture, and we're a town that tends to like trying to put and keep California architecture as much as possible. I don't think enough of it is done in the outlying areas. It's done quite well in the center, but we're trying to foster that.
Just a quick follow-up on the detail, because it's one of the other things I wanted to note was the slope coming down from the Blossom Hill. And so you said there's a 6-foot difference in the starting elevation from the building to the immediate right to your building. And so what is the height difference from the tops of the buildings? Is it also 6 feet?
Buildings are about the same height. Theirs is 2 or 3 inches higher, so call them the same. So there's about a 6-foot height difference between peak to peak. The ridge point of
Okay.
the building on the right to this point here, which, I mean, this point here is substantially lower. This is 20 feet, I believe.
And the tower is 26 and change,
That's
right?
26 because I needed to get this looking correct architecturally. I had to put the windows around, and I need that, and then I flattened the roof on the top to give it a standing seam metal roof, which is, again, a feature of that architecture.
Okay, thank you.
I think it works well.
Commissioner Smith.
Mr. Jeans, I'd like to just ask you some questions about the sump pump toward the back of the lot. It is now installed. Did I understand you correctly?
It has been installed. In fact, everything along here has been installed. That drain has been put in. It's a 12-inch storm drain. It goes all the way out to the middle of Union, ties into an 18-inch drain running along there. But because no improvements have occurred along here, water still flows across it. It's underground. The water that comes down here is meant to go in a swale, and this is actually out here. It's right out almost at Union Avenue, at Panorama Way, and it was put in at the request of staff after talking with the neighbors, who said there will be a lot of water that comes from the 2 lots here that we were then asking to develop and have now been built. And that water will go across and all come out onto Panorama Way. Is there a way that we can fix that? So what was determined to be a very good solution was to put this grate ties into a little well. And in that little well is a sump pump. So in heavy rain, the water will go into that grate, into the sump pump, and be pumped uphill slightly through a 2-inch pipe and discharged into this drainage area here, that pipe, which will then gravity flow down to the storm drain in Union.
So my question to you is this an electric sump pump?
Yes.
And my second question is, who is responsible for the maintenance of the sump pump?
There is a maintenance agreement. It's not the town. It is the owner of this property, and they have to maintain it. And if it fails, all that happens is the water comes out onto Panorama, and someone will notice, they'll notice, Tom Mangano, the next door neighbor, Jeff Mitchell across the street, will notice that the water is flowing onto Panorama into the curb there, and someone will maintain it.
My question then is, what triggers it to turn on? Is there a certain depth that it has to reach first?
It's normally when the way a sump pump works, there's a float. I don't know how big the sump is, but let's say it's like a drum.
That was going to be my
Pump is
next
at the bottom.
question.
There's
Right.
a float.
Okay.
When the float hits a certain level, it pumps. You don't want it to turn on just when there's a little bit of water, because there's not enough water to fill this line. What you want is when you have a substantial amount of water, you want that to turn on and keep pumping until it comes.
So just so that I understand though, so it's in place, but it is not functioning.
It is in place and it is functioning.
It is functioning.
It is. Now, it may have failed occasionally. Remember, it's only just been installed. I'm sure some fine-tuning had to happen in order to make the swale work, to the drain, to the sump, to get it to work. But it does work, and the current owner of that property is responsible for maintaining it. I'm sure he will be under warranty from Jeff for the first year to make sure that that is done.
Thank you.
Other questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Talsfor.
Right. I just wanted to clarify too. It's about architecture, and it's about the clear stories above the clear story window inset above the garage. Can you tell me the function of that? That element?
It's not really particularly functional. It lets nice light down into the backside of the garage, so you don't have to have the lights on all the time. If you can imagine, a garage is about 20-odd feet deep, 23 feet deep, whatever it is, and part way back there, in the middle of the garage, you get a lot of light coming down, natural light. And that's a nice feature. Now, it doesn't impact anyone. It faces Union. It adds a nice design aspect to the house that I think is very beneficial. On the rear of the house, there is a similar one, but that is much more functional because it brings light into the kitchen area, which otherwise would be darker because it's quite a distance from the windows.
Okay. And then follow-up question. Another question is, I'm looking on A1 of your architectural elevation.
All right, I
And
found
It
it.
appears you have a 33-foot garage in width. Is that correct? And I'm curious as to why a bump out that actually puts the house closer to the neighbor's house. What's the reason for the bump out?
Well, that would be a workbench. The allowed setback along that side is 8 feet. When we were in dialogue with the first two lots, Mr. Mangano had requested that we step that back, and we were asked if we could have at least, I believe, 9 foot or 9'6". so we went 10 feet. We thought it was appropriate to stay 10 feet away there. So this is at 10 feet. The garage is at 12 feet. The house is at 14 feet. So we're actually stepping away from the neighboring property, which is back here. So by the time you're with the actual house, you have about 24 feet of separation from Stephanie Lynot's rental to the house here. And we thought that if you turn behind you, directly behind you, you'll see how the roof steps up as you move away. So the closest gable is the gable from the pop-out. The next gable is the garage, and the third gable is the roof. So the house height steps up as it moves further and further away, and we did that on purpose to try to minimize the shading. And if you were to look at the shadow study, you can see that the house shadow is minimal. Stephanie Lynott was concerned about the winter and fall shadows. So this is a model. We have the house built in our computer, so it's modeled. So the shadow is a little bit taller than that of the fence at 9 in the morning. Lot 2's shadow is here. At noon, again, there's a small shadow and not a lot of shading, and that was because we stepped it back.
Right. So there, I see other areas, though, in this garage that it looks like you could possibly put a workbench, but am I reading the plan wrong? It would be next to the mechanical room, that area?
You could do some storage along there.
Okay, thank you.
You could do a workbench there, but
You could do something. Thank you. That's what I needed to
Okay.
know. Thank you.
all right.
Other questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you, Mr. Jeans.
Thank you.
So we'd call Stephanie Lynott.
My name is Stephanie Lynott. I live at 15910 Union Avenue. I'm on the half acre adjacent to lots 1, 2, and 3, and have been heavily impacted by lots 1 and 2, obviously. A few ways I can go on this. The winter fall shadow, the sunrise has been taken away from the backside of my house. I don't need a study to know that. I see it every day. But anyway, I don't want to go that way. I think what I want to get, since I only have a few minutes, the one thing that I'm asking out of all of this, and I have lost so much. I have noticed in this new design that around, well, the workbench is outside my front bedroom window. The dining room now, there's a dining room there. That is directly outside my 2.5 by 3 foot bathroom window, so I have a straight shot into a dining room. And then as that goes around the turn to the kitchen dining room, there's a door. And I am asking that that door become windows as opposed to a door. And the reason being, number one, there are 3 double doors and 2 other side doors that go out into the backyard. My bedroom is right there on the corner, and with the traffic from kitchen, walkway, dining room, right at the bedroom door, lighting, noise, I mean, we all know that this is the hub of the family. And being the bedroom is there, I would think that that would help reduce a little bit of the noise, not having traffic in and out of the house at that corner. So that's the one thing I really ask. It seems that the oak tree will stay, because without that, total invasion. What I'm questioning also is on these screen trees. Yes, I did get 4 trees. They were 4 or 5 gallon trees. They're in the front yard down by the road. They don't screen anything that I have. All along in all the plans and at all of our meetings, we were told that along the garage wall of lot number 2, there would be all of these wonderful screen trees, and there is not one. And when I asked Jeff Grant why none were put in there, he said, well, because of the drainage, we can't do it. So they've got a 10-foot distance. They've got the drainage. They have the walkway. Along the side of the garage on lot 1, it's the same situation. The drainage is there. There's a 10-foot distance to the garage. There's a walkway. So if they can't put the trees down there, how are they going to put them there? And I also don't understand on the opposite side of the property, where there's an 8-foot distance, how they're going to have the house, the wall, a walkway, some form of drainage, I suppose, and trees. There's nowhere to put them. So I do question that.
Thank you, Ms. Lynett. Questions for Ms. Lynett? Commissioner Smith.
Ms. Lynett, I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing when you talk about the dining room. On our plans, we see a dining room in the front of the house.
He's calling it a kitchen nook.
It's the breakfast nook.
The
Is that
breakfast nook.
that's
It
what you're
sounds
referring
cozy, but yes, that's where homework gets done, and that's where that's the busy section of the house. I think we all know that from our houses with kids' kitchens and nooks.
And what you are saying is that there is a door off of the breakfast nook outside, correct? That
Yes.
you want changed into a
Right at my patio, but also at my bedroom windows on the corner of my house. So it's
And-
corner to corner house.
Okay, and so then according to the architect, then that is approximately 24 feet from your property?
Well, he's counting, my distance with my property, and I know that he represents my trees there, but those are not screen trees. Those are big shade trees. So he always represents these trees, but they have no significant value other than it helps balance out his building. But I guess that might be total footage. I don't know. I think it's 14 feet. But, the noise carries there horrendously. I can hear conversations at the back ends of Leawood, let alone right there at my bedroom.
You're in a
window.
sound area. Thank you.
Commissioner Talasfor.
So it's interesting. I mean, we've been at this a long time
We
with
have,
your
my
property.
lordy.
So
Get it
I saw in here, we're talking about some screening, and I can't find it at the moment. But it was something about providing screening to you either on, and I thought in his, Mr. Jeans's response, it said that it could be on your side or on his, on the-
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, okay, so-
Oh, I think maybe you're getting mixed up that they had given me 4 5-gallon trees that are about 3 feet tall, and they're out towards the street end. The screen trees, I've been told, will go along the garage
No,
wall.
here it is.
Okay.
Here it is. Okay, so you said that you want something to be done about the dining room window that's
Outside my
proposed to be
bathroom
right
window.
outside my 3.5-foot bathroom window. Okay, at any number of meetings, I mean, we were let me just go through this. But anyway, it said, and so the answer was, there's a breakfast nook window facing the house to the north. Okay, so plenty of room for screening on either side of the fence. A shrub screen is proposed along the fence. So I'm not sure, but I'm thinking that that Mr. Jeans is offering here. I'll have to clarify that with him, but I needed to clarify it with you first,
Yes.
that those plantings would take place either on your side or the new home side.
Okay.
So,
I have not seen that because it was a desk item tonight.
okay.
I
so
just
do
am
you have-
questioning on their side, if they couldn't do it along lot number 2, how can they do it along lot number 1? It's the same drainage, it's the
Okay,
same
so
walkway, the same distance.
Would you then be amenable to having the screening planted on your side?
That would be fine. I'd love it on the back against, where lot number 2 is, because it's so stark.
Well, I'm talking
But,
about
but
outside
on
here.
lot number 1, yeah, it could be challenging because of the roots of the trees that exist there. They're very big trees, and I know all those roots have just been literally chopped off, and now they're all popping up in my yard and breaking through concrete. Yes, I can say yes to that, but it would be very difficult to plant because of
Okay, but you could
existing
say
roots.
yes to it, because otherwise you'll be looking at a fence.
Yeah. I don't even mind looking at the fence, and I have some bamboo out there now, in pots to help.
Okay.
But,
All right, I wanted to clarify that.
I might
Right.
ruin their breakfast if they see me in the bathroom or something, who knows?
Commissioner Sayoc.
Going back to the Nook now, just right now, you mentioned that your top request would be to remove the door and have it replaced by windows, but I do want to ask you about the letter that you did submit, where you did ask that the windows be removed. So with regards to the Nook, it sounds like the
At
wall.
the time, I did not realize there was going to be a door.
Okay,
And that door to me is more important because it's right at the bedroom window. And, you know, with kitchen, dining, in and out, it'll be noisy.
okay.
And it's right at my patio also.
Okay, and then my second question, if I may. In the garage, there's a window there that it looks like it's going to be a workbench. Can you tell me what on your property is that?
It looks directly into the front bedroom, which
This
is
is your
about 6 foot width, two large windows. And that looks, so each of the windows on that on the side of the house, each one looks directly into
Another one?
something.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Other questions for Ms. Lynett? If not, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We call Thomas Mangiano next.
Tom Mangano, 112 Panorama Way. It's been a long time, but just for those that are new, I live in this red dot right here on Panorama Way. This happens to also be the low point of this whole lot. And what we have here is the drainage plan that was approved by the council. And this drainage plan said that the water was supposed to be going this way and this way. And this was an agreement we had with Gaylord, John Gaylord. But somehow the drainage plan's been changed, and you'll see why. The other thing is the applicant is saying the drainage isn't working because of the water on this lot. It's not true. This is the proposed, when I show you some pictures, look at it. This is 8 feet. This is 10 feet. Why would you plant redwood trees in an 8-foot spot in the middle of the swale? In 10 years, the bioswale's gone. Redwood trees grow about 6 inches in diameter a year. This is the proposed new drainage plan. He's bringing it water from here, and from here, the water is supposed to, this is like the Kennedy assassination bullet. It's supposed to go this way, then down here, and go into a drainage here. What works on paper doesn't necessarily work in reality. This is normal landscape drainage. This is in August and July when I started calling the city. This system that was put in doesn't even handle landscape water. This is the storm flow on 1223. Water's coming all the way from the back, not from the lot behind, but from the back to me. This is the puddling. The water's coming down towards me. This is the storm drainage between the two houses. Drainage is done for one storm every 2 years. We've had two two-year storms already in 6 weeks. Storm flow 1223. Sump pump right there, not able to keep up. Sump pump 12-2. Sump pump isn't working because they didn't put the plug high enough. You don't put the plug at grade level. Panorama Way now has a waterfall, another water feature put in by this design. We have a drainage problem. It's worse. In your package, I put a whole, this is from John Bourgeois' question and how that, according to Mr. Jeans, the drainage was all going to go away. I have water under my house for the first time in 8 years. What changed? This development. I built $1 million house 8 years ago, and now I got water again.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Mangiano? Commissioner Smith.
In terms of the water under your house, I just have one question. Do any of the either your home or any of the close by homes have French drains under them?
When I redid my house in 2004, I put a French drain around my house. I religiously looked under the house for the last 8 years, and my ground was dry. This year, my ground is wet. My house is about 2 to 3 degrees cooler, and my ground under my house is wet.
Thank you.
And there's only one thing that changed.
Other question for Mr. Mangiano at this time? Thank you, sir. We call Orr Busing.
Good evening, I'm Orv Busing. I live at 15892 Union Avenue. I'm the second lot north. I have lived at this address for the last 40 years and have been a Los Gatos resident for 50 years. The applicant has proposed building a 6-foot-high stucco wall on the front property line facing Union Avenue. This wall does not meet existing building code standards. The engineering staff report for this project recommends the wall be set back 15 feet from the curb to meet code standards for approval. I request that the Planning Commission support the Town Engineering Department staff recommendation requiring the applicant to meet the requirements of the code sections 23.10.080 and 29.4.030. The applicant proposes a wall on the property 10 feet from the curb. I know he is saying 11. Put a scale to the drawing and it shows me 10. I'm not an architect. Both the location and proposed 6-foot height impact the safety for cars leaving a blind driveway to enter Union Avenue traffic and to pedestrians walking on the sidewalk. Residents regularly jog and walk on Union Avenue sidewalks. Many parents push strollers and students walk to school. A wall gives a blind area for a safety for these residents. Mr. Jeans has responded to many questions from commission members and neighbors about fencing and a wall on Lot 1 during this multi-year process. I'd like to show you 2 examples extracted from meeting transcripts. This was on transcript of this commission, February 25th, 2009. There were some points brought up by Mrs. Lineout about sound walls, about retaining walls, etc. Those were holdovers from previous plans. We're not talking about sound walls here. Sorry, I should have pulled this out. We're not talking about sound walls here. I don't particularly like the idea of a sound wall on Union. I don't want a corridor all the way down to Highway 85 with sound walls. This is on August 26, 2009. Commissioner Bourgeois asked a question. and the response. I think the sound wall is a leftover from when the 4 lots were proposed. We are not proposing a sound wall. Mr. Jeans, we've had no design discussions about Lot 1. I will try to persuade Mr. Grant not to require me to put a sound wall there. I will fight back on that one. I don't think it's appropriate. I will try to mitigate noise from the street in other ways. I don't like sound walls. There are many occasions when the sound wall has come up and the statements were made, no sound walls. And the neighborhood feels they have not been heard.
Thank you, Mr. Busick. Do we have questions at this time? If not, thank you very much. Luis Martinez.
Good evening. My name is Luis Martinez. I live at 101 Leewood Court. We reside on the upper side. We're the house right next to the one that's being built right now. We have a few concerns that I'd like to point out here. One of them was the trees. Lots of trees were removed way from the beginning. We have had to endure all the car lights into our backyard since that happened. So we want to make sure that the promises made to us that the trees would be put in between the properties stay there. I mean, it's very important for us to have an area where you can come out on the backyard and actually, enjoy the trees that were there before. Right now, there's nothing. I mean, it's just all we see is construction. So having said that, the second thing that we want to bring out is the privacy concern. Since all the trees went down, we haven't had much privacy because of the construction. This has been going on now for over a year. Unluckily for us, our fence, we see it like 4 feet higher than the next lot. So we come out into our backyard and they can see us, we can see them. We have always said we would like to have a taller fence put in between us. That would be privacy between us and our neighbors. And we still would like to stay with that. If we could work something out with the builder to provide a fencing between us and them, it would benefit both us and them at the same time. The last thing that I want to go over is the tower that he's putting there. It was pointed out that if the lights were put in the wrong position, it would become like a lighthouse, and that would impact us because our bedrooms are to the back of the house. And also, anytime we're outside at night, nobody likes to have a beacon around. So we have brought all these concerns up. We discussed them with the builder, and hopefully they'll be addressed. But I wanted to bring them out here so that everybody hears it, and hopefully something will get written down so that this happens. We have reviewed the plans. There's not much that can be done about the house. It's going to be built anyways. It is smaller than ours, so there's nothing I can say about that. Sound walls for us are okay. We have sound walls on our property, so, but I know that other people may not feel the same way about them. So having said that, that's all I need to say.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Questions for Mr. Martinez? Commissioner Talsworth.
Excuse me, but you said that when you step out into the yard, you look into, did I understand that you look into the tower?
No, we looked right into the property.
You're
if
right,
you're standing
but
on
you're
my
above.
property and you look over, I can see everything. I mean, it's just we're so
You can
high
see
up
down.
that there's no privacy between the people or us that are standing on my property, even though we have a 6-foot span in between. The 6-foot span is only about this tall by the time you get to the side of it. I can literally go like this and stand on the top of the fence and look.
Okay.
Because the fence is so far down because
And so
we're 4 feet
okay,
elevated.
can you remind me then what your comment was about the tower?
Oh, the tower. Oh, when they build that tower that they have there, if they put lighting in the wrong direction, it could be just putting out light. And that is going to be putting light right into my property. And at night, it would be obnoxious. In the daytime, you couldn't see it, but yeah, it's mainly for the nighttime. And if we ever are out there with friends or, you know, having, you know, because we have a pool, sometime with people and things, you don't want to have a big lighthouse in the back. It takes away from everything. I mean, it just blinds you. So we're just concerned that the light doesn't come out. Now, we discussed that with them. They said, well, we can arrange lights so that they go downward and nothing happens. And so, I don't know. We'll see when it happens.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you for coming before us. My question, actually, I just need a clarification about the lights from the cars that, can you, I know where your house is. It's to the right, if I'm facing the proposed new construction, it's to the right of it. So what lights shine into your property?
I can see cars coming down from about 2.5 blocks all the way until they get to my sound wall. The lights are just all the way through. You can see them all the way.
But my question is, those lights coming down from Blossom Hill, in other words, to the front of your house, or you're saying
They're
up
coming up
Union
They're
from
coming up Union.
Up Union?
Up Union, correct.
And
So
that's because your wall is so low?
Yes, yes. The
As
fence is actually low. My house is elevated literally because it goes up like, you know, it's like a hill, right? So by the time you get to the fence here, my house is here. I mean, I can wash dishes on my kitchen, and I'm seeing all the cars coming through.
And do you have plantings on your side of the fence?
I put some there wasn't any before because when I moved in, it was all trees back there. You couldn't see a thing. They're all gone now. So I put potted plants with palms in there just to try, but it's not enough. I mean, you can still see all the light just comes right through it.
All right, thank you.
Other question for Mr. Martinez? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Jeff Mitchell.
Jeff Mitchell, 115 Panorama Way. As Commissioner Telesford mentioned, this has been a long, drawn-out event. I'm sure you all have grown weary of it. I think the neighborhood has as well. But just to call a spade since day one, this really has been a matter of forcing a square peg into a round hole. It goes back to a 4-home proposal at first, and then subsequent iterations of submissions for the 3 lots, which were eventually denied by both the Planning Commission and the Town Council, but mysteriously overturned. And so here we are today. I do want to make a couple of points that the references to the fences that were shown, the photographs between Thomas and Ann Way, that's a sidewalk along the side of homes that face outward. So you're looking at a walkway next to the side of homes, not the front-facing yard and home itself. I think that the water issues are being dramatically misrepresented. Tom's pictures don't do justice to the situation with the water and the drainage on the landscape at the 2 existing properties. If you don't believe me, ask the owner of 117, who's currently dealing with and has been dealing with kind of swampish issues in their backyard. So it's not all being managed by the drainage that's in place. I think that back to the square peg in a round hole, if you look at the issue with the wall and the placement of 11 feet versus 15 feet, again, that 11 feet representation is a walk area next to homes, whereas this is the front-facing home, plus it's a place that people are going to be turning into. And ultimately, why are we arguing about the 4 feet? Well, it's because someone's looked at this space and tried to figure out how to maximize the square footage to the ample, to the maximum they can get. But it's at the compromise of being reasonable with the existing neighborhood. Don't get me started about existing neighborhoods. I guess ultimately what I'd like to really emphasize, and I'm here to support Stephanie and Tom and Orv, is that there needs to be a balance here. And I think that if you look at the history of this project, there's been aggressive exceptions made to the benefit of the developer and the owner. And with all due respect, I don't feel like that's taking into consideration the impact of the neighborhood that exists today. It hasn't historically, and we're still going through this issue. 11 versus 15. It should be 15. And when there's considerations about a door going into someone's, 24-foot distance from their home, this existing home, that should be considered too. Don't deny the rights of the existing residents when reviewing this application, and take their impacts into as aggressive consideration as you would for the developer. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Questions for Mr. Mitchell at this time? Mr. Jeans, 3 minutes to make some additional comments.
I'm not going to dwell on the existing drainage too much, except to say that this waterfall is coming from Cambrian Way, and that water was coming there no matter what. That said, I'd like to deal with some of the, I personally think that if there is an ongoing problem, that engineering should be looking at that with Mr. Grant to see if the sump pump is undersized or not. I know that there were problems initially. I know he had to raise the electrical panel for that because it shorted out and the sump pump stopped working. That said, I'm not familiar with what is going on, and I don't think it's really relevant to this house design at the moment. I'd like to put up a couple of things here. First of all, Mr. Martinez was talking about his view. He sees lights coming along this road over what is a 6-foot fence, I believe. He's requested that we ask that that be an 8-foot fence on top of a 4-foot wall. We don't have a problem with that. However, I think that's a separate discussion, and if staff wants to allow an 8-foot fence, we're not against it. Mr. Martinez has asked for redwoods to be planted here, so we do want to plant them. They ultimately will grow tall enough to screen as his do. He has some redwoods along here. They'll screen portions of Union from his view, and that's what he's after, and that's why we're doing that. The reason we can't go with a 15-foot setback is we need 25 feet of turnaround because we were required by staff to allow people to go out forwards onto Union. We're trying to do that, and we need the 15-foot, the 25-foot reversing area in order to achieve that. I'd like to propose a few things for Stephanie. We don't need a window in this workbench area, and that is opposite her front bedroom window. So we could condition that to be eliminated, or at least a very high window that's up around 6 or 7 feet. These screen trees, you should condition so that there is screening planted here. The reason it could not be down the other direction was not only was there drainage, but there was a PG&E line that came all the way between the properties to bring electricity down here. All we have here is drainage, and we have plenty of room to put screening trees. I'm suggesting Myrica californica or an English laurel or something like that, so that it's a hedgerow along here. Now, if there were to be a dialogue between Stephanie and Mr. Grant, some screening could be put on the opposite side, but we believe that there is plenty of room in that 14-foot to put screening trees here to obviate the need for that. I don't think it's right to ask Mr. Grant not to have a door from his nook to the yard. The bedroom window is way over there, and the door is facing this way. I don't think that's an issue. This is an issue. I understand that. I think it's appropriate. We can use the light from the clear story windows in the garage to get light in there. We don't need it.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans. Do we have questions for Mr. Jeans at this time? If not, Commissioner Sayoc, pardon me.
Mr. Jeans, the trees that are currently, if you could walk me through your landscape plan, on the northern side between you and, I believe it was Mr. Martinez, do you have that currently in place so that screen trees Actually, I'm looking at it now. So you do currently have in your landscape plan to place trees.
We've put on our landscape plan all the screening that people have asked for.
Okay.
So Stephanie had asked for screening along there. Under those tall trees, we can't put trees, but you could do a great hedgerow with Myrica californica, which is native, or an English laurel, which is drought tolerant. It's been here for 200 years. And that would fill out nicely. It would grow to, well, you can keep it trimmed, or it'll grow to about 12 feet, which would be an ideal hedge along that property line if she wants to see greenery. That's what I would do. And I want you to condition it so that when planning comes by at the end, they look for trees planted along that between line of sight, between Stephanie's window and any windows over here. This is actually where the window, where am I? I think that's where the window is there. So there would be screening here. 24 feet between the properties is a huge distance. You really can screen that very well.
Okay, and now what about on the northern side?
That's the northern.
I meant
You
that's
mean
the
down
northern,
here?
the southern, yes, with Mr. Martinez.
We agreed with Mr. Martinez a long time ago to put redwoods there. They're there at his request. Initially, they'll just, you know, because his fence is sitting on a 4 or 5 foot high wall. So he's got 10 feet before you get to the top of the fence. So the redwoods planted there will just start tickling the top of the fence initially if we put in 24-inch box, which is what these are proposed to be. And maybe they'll be a couple of feet higher, but they'll grow 3 feet a year. And when the base of the redwood starts to spread out, you trim it at the bottom 10 feet because we don't need it here. It's Mr. Martinez who wants it above the hedge. So these are specifically designed for him. We said we'll also put a couple here to try to get some depth to the screening because it really is visible when you stand there. There used to be a major, major tree out here, a pine tree. It was an ugly tree, but it blocked a lot of light. You know, the lights coming along. So we're trying to replace those with depth along here and to give him privacy along there. So we think we've reached an agreement. We've also, Mr. Grant was out with Luis the other day, and they've agreed that when the trees are available, they will jointly work together as to the placement of the trees so that the line of sight blockage is optimum.
Other questions for Mr. Jeans? Thank you. So at this time, we'll close the public portion of the public hearing and turn to the commission for comments, questions of staff, or a potential motion. Commissioner Sayoc.
Actually, if I could have staff engineering just walk me through the drainage issues, and specifically, just if you could just walk me through it, and then if I have any further questions, I could just augment that.
Absolutely. The drainage issue, just like as mentioned by Mr. Tony Jeans, it was designed to collect the surface drainage through a swell system on the lot, on the panorama, and then to the catch basins, and then eventually go into the sump pump and pump into catch basins on this lot right here, and gravity drain into Union Avenue. So that's the design system that we have in place. I assume that you have concern based on the pictures that was provided here. So 2 things here. The storm drain system that we had last month, it was unprecedented. I mean, it taxed many of our storm drain system. So I'm not surprised to see this in a short durations. The sump pump needs time to get the water out with the gravity system. So this, to some degree, act as we expect it to be, because it's holding the water and drain it into the catch basins and then pump it out to the system on the Union, instead of as it had been in the past, flow into the neighbor's yard. If there was not a swell here, this water would have gone to the neighbor's yard, as it has in the past, without this system in place. So.
Okay, so 2 questions. The first is, basically your comment that, okay, it's working the way we're anticipating. We weren't anticipating the storm that we had.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, everyone seems to be talking about the storms being unusual, but the unusual storms are now usual. And so my point is, in your opinion, is it undersized, and should we then size it for storms as we just had so that this doesn't occur again in the future?
For a typical engineering design, when you sign some, we cited to a 10 years event. This is more than a 10 years event. I was trying to look up to see, there was a talk about it's 25 years, 50 years event. So in a normal situation, we don't oversight the system to anticipate either a 25 or 50 years event. That's just not, that's how, not typically how we do it in engineering design. There were a time, I'm not quite sure, there was a time that the circuits were short because the water it came up to the panel of the sump pump, which we have let Mr. Grant know, and he has taken care of that issues. So I'm not quite sure. Part of that, of this situation was that because of the sump pump's not working for a short period of time too, and that has been taken care of.
And then, Mr. Chair, if I could just continue with, actually, I don't even know if you would know. Is the house currently occupied by someone else? Has it been sold?
Yes, it has.
So if there's problems with the sump pump, who does the town go to? Mr. Grant or the current owner?
The current, right now, there is a maintenance agreement that Mr. Grant has with all the homeowners there. They have to share the cost of it because we require Mr. Grant to provide us a document that there is a maintenance agreement, during this approval process to make sure that the town's covered. So it will need to go to those 3 homeowners, well, 2 for now, and Mr. Grant on the 3rd lot.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my last question is, how could you explain the water that is currently, we have testimony that the neighbor has had water now under his home after 8 years. How would you explain that?
Unfortunately, I was not out there to see it in this particular spring event. During the past, 4 or 5 years with this process, there has been discussion that there has been water into their house, so they want to make sure that it was stopped. And so I'm not quite sure if it's this event or other previous events. So we did not receive any phone call. This is the first time I know of this. And so if there was anything else, we'd be gladly to work with the neighbors.
Commissioner Birch?
So the sump pump sits on a private property, and the maintenance is shared between 3 of the residents.
That's right.
Is there a set maintenance schedule? Is there a testing schedule for that, or do we just wait until there's a large rain and then it's just noticed if it's not working?
The testing schedule is based on the manufacturer recommendations, and I don't remember offhand right now. Typically, it's every year. It's supposed to check it and make sure that it works properly.
Who verifies, though, then that they're testing?
There's a stormwater agreement that the developer has to sign with us, and provide to us, and they are supposed to keep documents, and we can come and ask for those documents at any time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bourgeois?
Just continuing on the drainage issue. So from what I'm hearing from your answers to the previous commissioners' questions is that I just want to get to the bottom line here. Town engineering is confident that the design, as it's been presented, is adequate to handle a 10-year event.
That's right.
What is the process moving forward? Say this all gets approved tonight, it gets built. What is the process moving forward if that turns out not to be the case and they continue to have problems or the problems are apparently worsened? How do the neighbors What is their, do they come to Mr. Grant? Do they go to the town? I just want to understand what happens after this is in the ground and it's operating or not.
We, at this time, if there's an issues, then they can come to us, and we will work with Mr. Grant to take care of any issues that, if it's not functioning properly. After that, then we will need to work with the 3 homeowners of that subdivisions based on the agreement that they have in place.
Okay, so the bottom line is neighbors still experiencing problems after this is in the ground should contact the town engineering staff.
They could, and we can work to, we can help work out the solutions.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
If something is designed for a 10-year storm, obviously there are storms that are greater than 10 years. So when that event occurs, the drain is not designed to handle a heavier storm, is that right?
The goal is to make sure that to handle the 10-year storm, anything above the 10-year storm, what we call is an overland release, the goal is not flood the house and take it directly to the street. And the street is supposedly is the drainage for anything above the 10 years. Typically it's a 50 years, 100 years event.
Well, when you look at these photographs and you see what I perceive to be the sump, if that, I don't know what that's designed for, but whatever it's designed for. I guess all I'm saying is you design for something.
Mm-hmm.
You design for a maximum storm. Obviously, definitionally, if something is greater than what it's designed for, you can't very well criticize you always have the possibility of having a storm greater than the design storm.
Right.
That's what I'm wondering is, I hear you just say, yeah, but if you have a storm greater than the design storm, don't worry about it because it's all going to flow out to the street. But obviously that's not true if it's down at the sump pump because it's got to be pumped up to the street.
Right. The overland, there's two portions to that. The underground system is designed to handle the 10-year storm. What you see here is exceeding the 10-year storm, so therefore you see it on the overland, on the surface. And then it's holding there to drain out to the sump pump. Anything above that, it will drain out to the street. And so the swell system function as it should be, which is holding the water and draining it out instead of flowing into the neighbor. For a 10-year storm, it should drain, you will not see these water, the ponding here. It should drain directly to the catch basin, pump it out, and dry it. With this event that we just had passed here, there's some ponding. It takes longer for it to drain it out and pump it out than a normal 10 years event.
Just the final question, I guess, would be then, the neighbor is suggesting that in 8 years, the underside of his house was not wet. This winter, it is wet. Now, that doesn't prove something to me, but it causes you concern. So I guess what I'm saying is, what I hear you saying is, if we have a 25-year storm and we have a 10-year storm drain, the system is designed so that the pump won't be able to take it all, but it will flow out into the street and therefore flow away.
That's right.
So it's designed so that the neighbor's house doesn't get an excess of water. Is that correct?
That's right. Uh-huh.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Sayoc.
One last question before I move on to another topic. I understand engineering protocol designing for a 10-year. And from day one of this project, we've had the drainage issue brought forward, and we've had reassurances that should development occur, all these improvements would be taken care of. I'm a little concerned now because we have 2 of the 3 lots built, and now we have pictures showing that the problem has not been taken care of, and we now have testimony saying that one neighbor has been severely affected. So my question is, understanding engineering protocol of a 10-year design, can we change it so that we upgrade it to a 25, so that should another storm come forward that's more than the 10-year flow, we don't have the same problems occurring?
We are also restricted with the storm drain system on Union, given that it's an older system and the size of the pipe and all that too, and so it was sized accordingly to the existing system that we have out on the street, out on the Union also. What we can look at, and I can work with Mr. Grant, is to make sure that his sump pump is designed. If we need to upgrade it, then I will ask Mr. Grant to do so, along with his engineer. Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
The problem I have is we don't have any proof of almost anything. We know that a neighbor's house apparently is wet underneath. We have some testimony that the 10-year storm would not flow to the neighbor, but would in fact flow to the street. So what we have is a neighbor who says the underside of my house is wet. We have the engineering staff says basically that ought not to happen because it ought to be flowing to the street. Now, maybe it does happen. I don't know. So I guess if we're worried about how to protect ourselves, I wonder if we can have a condition to find out what, if any, is the failure, if it is a failure. I don't know if it's a failure. If this is designed for a 10-year storm and the design is fine, then the next question is simply, and if we have a 25-year storm, is all of the water from the particular area we've designed for going to flow to the street? There is nothing to say a 25-year storm won't get the neighbor's house wet because water does what water does. But this is supposed to be designed so if there's an overflow situation, it doesn't go to the neighbor, it goes to the street. So when we're talking about looking into this, I assume that we could have, I guess, engineering confirm that the design of the system is in fact what it's supposed to be.
We can definitely condition it to make sure that they don't revisit the calculations and make any adjustment if they need to handle up to the 25 years event. You know, to make sure that it doesn't impact the neighbors.
Do we know what the storms, we've had a testimony about 2 storms.
That's right.
Does anybody know what those storms?
I was trying to look for that. I'm overheard that it could be a 25 to 50 years, but I'm not certain, and I can look into it.
Because ultimately, you can't design for every storm. You can have a 100-year storm.
That's right.
You can have a 1,000-year storm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, at some point, you stop designing and cross your fingers. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Smith.
Could you tell me the expected date of the, at least start of the completion of the Union Avenue improvements that are going to happen, the widening?
The expected date of completions?
Or start. I'm just trying to figure out the start of the construction of this home and the street widening at the same time, because there's just that one corridor that hasn't been widened.
That's right. They have started the work already by obtaining encroachment permit from the town 2 weeks ago. And I know that they are coordinating with PG&E for construction, and it was supposed to be this coming Monday. Yeah. So to start the work out on Union. Yeah. Did I answer your question or? Yeah.
Other questions or comments from the commissioner? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I have a question of staff. I'm not sure if it's engineering or not, but moving to the wall, the setback on the wall, the 11 versus 15. Mr. Jeans made an interesting point that they needed that 25-foot space turnaround, so that pushes that wall out to 11 feet instead of 15. Was that your understanding of the requirements as well?
That's in the area of the garage where you see the area on the site plan that's kind of a pink color. That's the driveway. That's the turnaround and backup area for the garage. And that's the area he's referring to. So that is true. If the wall was allowed to go along the front property line, it would have to go between the edge of the driveway and turnaround area and the property line.
But only for that area of the pavers, is what you're saying.
Yes, but then when you get where the actual driveway connection is to the street, a 6-foot wall in that area is problematic because it would conflict with the line of sight.
Okay.
So it need 10 foot from the driveway, it'd have to be a lower wall or not be there.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments at this time? Commissioner Birch.
At any time, did the applicant investigate or present anything other than the wall in front? Did they, in any point, submit anything with more of landscaping between the house and the street, or a partial fence, partial landscaping, or has this always been the proposed?
The wall has always been part of this particular application, but this application wasn't filed until 2012. So the wall was not on any of the subdivision plans.
Thank you.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Yeah, going along with the wall, I'm looking at the shrubs that are in front of the wall, which would add another certain depth, I would think. But it says here that they would be, I just need a clarification of how wide these shrubs would grow, and would that add to inhibiting the, line of sight?
Mm-hmm.
So they're 15, it says 15-gallon English laurel. So what do do they grow tall? Do you have to keep,
They have the potential, as Mr. Jean stated, they can grow 8 to 12 feet in height, but in the vicinity of the driveway, a hedge, if it's going to be a hedge, that would have to be kept lower, because we have the same issue: a fence, a hedge, a wall. It has to be kept down to 3 feet when you're in the vision triangle area.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, or an invitation for a motion? Commissioner Sayoc.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll list out the points that give me some concern, and then I'll wait to hear how my other commissioners feel about that, and then we'll see if we can try and develop a motion from here. In terms of the design itself, what I would like to see changed is based on the testimony from Ms. Lynette. I do agree that a dining nook, well, a nook, I'll just call it a nook instead of a dining room, since there seems to be some confusion there. But the windows where the garage workbench as well as the nook adjacent to bedrooms are a cause of concern for me. And so I would actually propose that those windows be removed, and also the request for the nook door be replaced with windows. So based on that testimony, I think that's reasonable, and I think that alleviates the privacy concerns that the existing neighbor currently has, and would support that. In terms of the screening, the tree screening that's being proposed, that Mr. Jeans had also recommended, I would clearly like that to be a condition of approval as well. In terms of the wall in front, I go back and forth. Certainly the 25-foot roundabout, that logic makes sense. My biggest concern driving down Union Avenue is that sound wall perception. And you do have homes that have walls, you have homes that have open landscape, and I would just hate to have Union Avenue just all of a sudden be just a 6-foot wall. And so I would recommend that actually it be pushed back to the 15, and my actual preference is that the wall be lowered to 3 feet. But of the two, definitely the pushback to 15 is my largest concern. And then the drainage issues, and this is the largest one for me, the drainage issues just gives me a lot of concern right now. From the get-go, as I mentioned, from day one, drainage has been the top priority, as well as neighborhood compatibility. And I'm a little concerned and a little nervous that it appears that the problem has worsened. And I would like, as Commissioner O'Donnell, more information on, is what has been developed, the sump pump, adequate to address a 10-year flow? And should a 25-year storm occur, the current design, is it enough to keep it onto the streets and away from neighbors. That's my top concern right now, and I don't feel the information presented in front of us addresses that, and I'm very hesitant to approve another site design that could exacerbate the problem. So that's where I'm at the moment. I just need that information in front of me. I don't feel comfortable approving one more site design until that's addressed. Thanks.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Commissioner Sack was asking for some comments, and the only question I have is when Commissioner Sack says remove the door and substitute windows, I can understand that. But to remove the window entirely of the regular window, I'm wondering if it's necessary, in your judgment, to remove the whole window as opposed to perhaps raising a higher window, because I'm just thinking about the lighting in the nook. It is apparently an eating area, and as I think somebody suggested, a very active part of the family life. And if you've got a blank wall there, I mean, granted, you're trying to protect the neighbor, and I'm all for that, but I'm wondering if it has to be totally removed, or whether you could have a higher or a smaller window, but something to let some light in there, whether you think something, whether that would be acceptable to you. Okay. That's the only question I had. And as far as the other thing goes, we have two possibilities, I think. One is to condition approval on the subsequent work of the engineering department. The other possibility, of course, is to continue it and ask the engineering department to get back to us. But I think those are two possibilities. So I would also like to know what the rest of the commission thinks about that.
Seeing no one else raising hands, I'll jump in the moment. I would share Commissioner Sayoc and Commissioner O'Donnell's concern about, I think it seems reasonable to me to change out the door at the nook to a window. I'm also concerned about having the blank wall on that, so it would seem to me if one could figure out a way to have some sort of a window on what would be the north wall of the nook, that would be desirable. I think the tree screening is very important. I would prefer to have no wall in the front of the house in terms of, in fact, I think it would be more compatible with the neighborhood as I see the neighborhood, because the wall, the orientation of this house to me seems more similar to the houses to its north than to its south in terms of the way it, and so I would prefer having no wall in the front. So whether it's at 11 or 15 feet is immaterial to me, because I would prefer to have no wall. I share the concern about the drainage, and would be generally, there's enough questions for me that I think generally be uncomfortable even conditioning something tonight, but I could be convinced. Commissioner Smith.
Well, I'll just jump right in here. I am concerned that the homeowner who's responsible for this sump pump is not here tonight. So to me, that's kind of the phantom homeowner who's responsible for the sump pump, but it's not working, but maybe it is working. And so that is a very gray area for me, and it causes me concern to allow substantial building on a property that we don't know what it's going to do to the drainage. The other, in terms of the drainage, the other thing I heard from Mr. Jeans is that he believes that some of this problem is going to be fixed when the improvements on Union Avenue are completed, the drainage issues. And since that's about to begin, maybe we will or will not see that. Secondly, I do think that some screening is necessary in front of the home. As I visited the site, I realized that even cars across the street who stop at a stop sign before they turn, there's a bedroom in the front of this house. I don't think they want the lights from cars stopping across the street to be right into that bedroom. So I know that there will have to be some kind of landscaping in front of the home, no matter what it is. And it doesn't have to be at the 10 or 15 foot, maybe it's just going to be closer to those windows in the front. So I am not in favor of the wall. I did travel up and down Union Avenue and in the neighborhoods, and I don't think that the wall is necessary. Although Mr. Cannon did talk in his letter about the garage being more predominant, and I think he, in a way, got us thinking about a wall and foliage, et cetera, in the front to screen perhaps more of that garage area. So those are my comments. Tonight, I'm not comfortable with without having a solution to some of the drainage issues.
Commissioner Talaswar.
Thank you. I could only echo my fellow commissioners' concern about the drainage. We knew about the drainage issues from before these homes were even story poled. And it's just sort of something that is just, you know, I feel like it's on our shoulders and we have to fix it now. And so I would agree. I wouldn't want this to go forward without being assured of what it is we need to do. And one thing that that was mentioned by Mr. Magano is that, and I don't know if he has expertise in this or not, but perhaps he said that the sump pump wasn't positioned properly as far as it was put too low into the ground. So whatever, it could be something that minor, or it could be something that it has to be retrofitted to a larger size. And I would agree with the 15-foot, and I would really like to see not a sound wall, but a screening, some landscaping. I think that would be ideal for that area. You know, that area actually started out as a rather rural type area. It is now become, I don't even know, it's just become one pocket of of housing and another. So I think maintaining that landscape in that front area will certainly help to soften the house and to maybe be a gradual transition going north on the right side. So for what that's worth. My other concern, though, is the tower. And because of all the windows, and I understand from what I read that the clear story, the lights were supposedly going to be spotted down, but frankly, you can't. How can you track that after it's sold or somebody moves in years to come? I'm particularly bothered by it because if I was a neighbor to any of those sides, when that's on, it's going to look like a lighthouse. So I would really like to have that really reconfigured, refined, either eliminate a lot of the windows or eliminate it entirely. I'm not so sure you need it. But if you think you need it, then I really would suggest that the windows have to be eliminated or at least, what shall I say, less than I see now. So those are my comments right now.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
If it's okay with Commissioner Birch, I'm going to go ahead and venture a motion. I think I've heard a fair bit of input. I'm going to try and reach some sort of compromise on what I've heard and what my own personal feelings are. So I'm going to move to continue this item with the following direction. One, that the town engineering staff give a review of the existing site conditions for drainage and get back to us with further information on the existing and proposed functioning of the drainage system. So I think that's something we've all heard loud and clear, that we want to make sure we're not doing something to make the situation worse and that we're actually doing something to improve it. And I think we all feel like we need a little more data, a little more background to be confident in that. So I would like that to be first and foremost. As for the design, I would like for staff perhaps to look at condition number six, which is the downlighting in the lantern element, which I believe is the tower, to see if they can maybe tighten up that language a little bit, just to make sure Mr. Martinez and Commissioner Talasfor's concerns are met. It's kind of loosely written, so maybe you can work with the architect to get a little bit tighter language there. I'd like on condition number 8, which is the new trees, I'd like to specify the tree species and locations as outlined or as discussed today and as outlined predominantly on the landscaping plans, which is sheet C4. I think we've heard some good agreement on between all neighbors is what they would like to see there, so I'd like to see that actually worked into condition number 8. On the north side of the building, I would like to maybe leave this up to the architect, whether either to eliminate the windows on that side of the nook and the workbench or to raise them to a level that allows light in but does not allow people inside to look out at the neighbor. So that's an architectural decision, whether there's no window or a high window. I don't know which is better, so I'm going to leave that to the discretion of the architect. I would also recommend, I think we've heard a consensus that the door, we would like to see the door replaced with a window. And the big one that I don't know if I'm going to have consensus on this is the wall. I'm of mixed feelings about the wall, so I'm going to, I see the pros and cons of each. I just am opposed to kind of walls in general. So I'm going to recommend it be set back 15 feet and be reduced in height to either a 3 or 4 foot wall. And then for the area around the, well, I guess I would say 3 feet because it'd have to be 3 feet around the driveway. So that's my shot at a motion, hearing what I've heard from my fellow commissioners.
Ms. Prop.
Prior to a second, could we get clarification on the first item regarding the drainage? Was it the commissioner's intent to require the applicant to provide that information to the town and the town to just review and verify that information regarding the drainage?
Well, I mean, I'd like town staff to do a site visit and see what's on the ground themselves. But whatever the normal protocol is.
Okay. We might recommend, of course, staff can do a site, but town staff might recommend that the direction be given to the applicant to provide the adequate technical data and respond to any staff inquiries or staff requests for that inspection.
And then staff would respond to that and provide us
correct
staff's opinion on that data. Okay, yes. Then that would be my motion.
Commissioner Sayoc.
I'll go ahead and second the motion. And, you know, I have no preference whether it's staff or the applicant that does the engineering data for the drainage. But what I would like is whoever does it be present at the next meeting so that any specific questions that we have, that person can be readily available to answer.
And since we have a second, do we need a date certain on that?
Please.
Yes, we will need a date certain.
I don't know.
We might look to February 27th would probably be the next available date. Or, yeah, February 27th.
Through the chair, maybe we could get a nod from the applicant if that's enough time. Okay, then I will make February 27th the date certain for the continuance.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the commission? I have a question for the staff myself then. So if the wall is set back to 15 feet, does that provide adequate turnaround space from the garage?
Not in the garage area, no.
Then let me clarify, because yeah, I thought that I thought the wall had to be set where it is for the garage area.
It does need to be set where it's shown on the site plan in the garage area. However, if it's 3 feet high, it's acceptable in that location. The town code allows walls within that traffic view area to be 3 feet. It's when they're higher than 3 feet, they're supposed to be set back the 15 feet. So if they lowered the height of the wall, it's not an issue in that location.
Okay, in that case, I'd like to amend my motion for it to be 3 feet, and just because the location of the wall is consistent with the wall on the adjacent property, and I don't see a point of having the wall offset and then going back out around the paver. So the motion would be to keep it at 11 feet but drop it to 3 feet high. Is that, am I understanding you correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that acceptable to the second?
Yes, that's fine.
Sure. Commissioner Birch first.
Would it be possible with the whole discussion on the wall, rather than just leave it as a wall and discuss the height, ask the applicant to perhaps give us some additional options? You know, whether it's a variance of the wall being shorter and different, whether it's landscape use, whether it's an intermittent fence with landscaping in between, to provide maybe different options that may be more aesthetically pleasing and tie into the neighborhood, but also give the applicant the privacy that they're looking for?
I mean, before I let you respond, let's see what Commissioner O'Donnell wanted to say. Let's see what the,
Within the vision triangle, yes, it does apply to hedges as well as fences or walls.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
I like Commissioner Birch's suggestion of having, if there's something better that we're not thinking of that kind of meets the intent of the feedback you're hearing, I think we'd be open to hearing that at the next meeting. I would, as the maker of the motion.
Is that acceptable, Commissioner Sayoc?
Yes, thank you.
For clarity, could we get the staff to remind us exactly where we are with the motion?
You want me to do it? Okay. Okay, we have on the town engineering staff, well, actually, we sort of modified this. Details of the existing drainage system need to be provided. Staff will do a site visit. The applicant will be providing adequate technical data, and that will be analyzed by staff, and an opinion provided. Condition number 6 regarding downlighting and the lantern element needs to be tightened. Condition number 8 needs to be modified to specify tree species and locations for new landscaping that will be planted. On the north side of the building, the 2 windows shall either be eliminated or possibly replaced with high windows at the applicant's discretion. And the door off the nook shall be replaced with a window. The front wall shall be reduced in height to 3 feet if it's on the 11-foot setback. And, well, it should be reduced to 3 feet, period. It's acceptable on the 11-foot. The applicant can provide other options with landscaping and or a fence or a different type of wall when they return.
And then add the engineer who provides the information be present at the next hearing.
Is that consistent, Commissioner Sayoc and Commissioner Bourgeois, with what you intend the motion to?
I was right on the money.
And the date certain, sorry, Chair, to February 27th.
Yeah. Other discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. So we move to other business. Is there a report from the Director of Community Development?
Yes, there's a report tonight. Last night, the council considered the Affordable Housing Overlay Zone and housing element. The council continued the matter and remanded it back to the General Plan Committee to consider additional sites to look at the possibility of spreading the Affordable Housing Overlay Zone sites over a greater area throughout the town. There was some talk to going back to the original site list that had about 41 sites on it, which was narrowed down to the 5. So that'll be kind of a starting off point, and also to consider other potential options for meeting the regional housing needs allocation. So that will be coming back to the General Plan Committee soon, and we'll begin those conversations again. And then lastly, tomorrow is the retirement reception for Wendy Rooney at 3:30, which I think you've all been invited to. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. Commissioner Talasfor.
Right. Will the AHAs come after it is reviewed again by the General Plan Committee? Can you clarify, will that come back to Planning Commission?
Yes, it will be just like the same. It will be the same process that was done before. The GPC will make a recommendation. It will come before the Planning Commission, who will make a recommendation to the council, and then they will make the final determination.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
With, I know Ms. Rooney is retiring, and she was also heading up the AHAS project. Is there going to be a new project lead assigned to that?
I don't know if it is official who will be handling that, and we are looking at that amongst many of the other tasks that Ms. Rooney was completing, and someone else will be taking that on in the current staff.
Okay, thanks.
Any commission matters from other commissioners? Commissioner Bourgeois.
Since general plan's going to have its plate full again, I'm just wondering if the chair has made subcommittee assignments yet. So
I was giving everybody else a chance first to do commission matters. So I have two things for the commission from the chair. The first is committee appointments, and I appreciate everybody giving me feedback about it. So on the General Plan Committee, would continue Commissioner Bourgeois, Commissioner Sayoc, and Commissioner Erickson added to replace the opening. On the Historic Preservation Committee, Commissioner O'Donnell will continue, and Commissioner Birch. On the Conceptual Design Advisory Committee, Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Talasfor continue on that. I guess all three of us will continue on that. And then in the event that the Sustainability Committee is activated, Commissioner Bourgeois and Commissioner Sayoc would continue on that committee, which I think is consistent with the feedback that I got from everyone in terms of what their preferences were in general. The other thing that I would share with you is just a memoranda from me to you that has my own thoughts about the commission, its meetings, and its deliberation as I begin my chair. You can read it at your leisure or not, and would welcome your feedback, and would also welcome your feedback over the course of the year as I serve as chair. And I will attempt to do the best to be a good chair over the course of the year and conduct the meetings consistent with what's in the memoranda I just circulated to you. Other commission matters? If not, we stand adjourned.